So next up, we have a talk from Peter Jones. He's going to talk about open sourcing sheet music. So as usual, you have 15 minutes, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Peter, and I'm talking about OpenScore, and it's our mission to open source sheet music. So we were last here back at FOSDEM 2017, where we announced OpenScore to the world, and we said that it was our mission was to basically do what OpenStreetMap did for maps or Project Gutenberg did for books. We want to do for sheet music, and specifically public domain sheet music. So what does this involve for sheet music? So we're basically taking, initially paper scores that are in the public domain, and it's a two-step process to create open source sheet music. Firstly, you need to scan the music to create bitmaps, but then you don't want to just stop with a PDF. You want something that you can actually interact with. We want to get musical source code. So that the next step is to convert it into an XML format so that you get a semantic score, something that renders with nice crisp lines, and that you can use to render audio as well, so you can actually listen to the score. So the step one is covered by IMSLP, which is the world's largest community of people who look for public domain scores around the world in libraries and so on, and scan these scores and upload them to the IMSLP archive. And the step two is covered by the Musescore community. So this is taking those PDFs off IMSLP and transcribing them to convert, excuse me, to convert the PDFs to XML. So Musescore is the largest online community of sheet music creators. And of course, it's open source software under GPL version 2. So the idea of this is that we create digital scores, something that you can actually listen to, not like a PDF, that you can edit, so you can change notes or extract parts, like instrumental parts, transpose the score, maybe if you're a singer, so that you can reach the notes. And then once you've made your changes, you want to be able to share those changes with other people without being restricted by copyright. So we're trying to liberate music from copyright and liberate it from paper. And so the liberation from paper was covered by the XML conversion, and the liberation from copyright is done by publishing all of the transcriptions under Creative Commons 0. So they're effectively fast-tracked into the public domain, so there's complete freedom to adapt them and share them. So in preparation, so we announced the project FOSDEM 2017, and at that point we had run one at that time pilot transcription to do the Tchaikovsky's Sixth Symphony, and then shortly afterwards we did another to transcribe Fauré's Requiem. So the method was that we would take an IMSLP PDF and we'd basically break it up into chunks of a few pages, send them out to Musescore users who would transcribe these pages, and then we would check them, and to see whether they were accurate with the original, and if not, then we'd request improvements, send them back, and then once they were all finished, we'd join them together to create a finished score. And the result of this was that we reckoned we could it would take about a month to fully transcribe a symphony using this method. But of course, you could run multiple in parallel to speed things up. And the hope is that while it was initially, myself doing the checking of all of these, that we would be able to invite more experienced transcribers to take some of the review burden. And then it would be up to me to do a final review before publishing it on the OpenScore account. So we then launched a Kickstarter campaign in June of 2017 and called OpenScore Join the Sheet Music Revolution. And the pitch of the campaign was that we would liberate an initial 100 works using the tools that we currently had available at the time. So this was like a concrete goal that we had, and then the more abstract aim of the project as well was that by backing this project, you'd also be helping enable it to grow in the future. So we would use this 100 works as like a trial at scale to try and establish the best procedures for doing the transcriptions, to solve any scalability issues, develop the required automation tools to enable it to grow in the future, to eventually liberate all public domain music. So how it worked was we appealed to Musescore users that if you give us your time in transcribing the scores, then we'll reward you with a pro membership of Musescore's music sharing website. And the Kickstarter backers is that if you help us if you help the project by contributing money, this will enable us to run the transcription effort and to make those scalability improvements. And the backers would get rewarded by, they would have, their name would appear in the credits, and there were perks that they could pay. If they paid a certain amount of money, then they would get to choose an edition that we would actually digitize, one of those 100. Or they could, and if they paid a bit more, then they could actually write a dedication in the public edition. So you could be the person to have a dedication in the public version of Beethoven's Fifth, for example. And as a bonus, each of these 100 editions would get a visualization made by the digital artist Nicolas Rougeau, who had been visualizing Musescore scores from Musescore.com before this, and here's a visualization of his of Vivaldi's Four Seasons that he created. So he offered to create a visualization of each of the OpenScore transcriptions. So we ran the campaign, and it lasted a month. We exceeded our goal of 45,000 euros. We managed to raise 51,000, and over 1,000 people backed the campaign, and hundreds of people, Musescore users, told us that they were interested in transcribing. So then the transcription work began straight away. And the way this would work is I would open a transcription group on musescore.com and invite a bunch of transcribers and give them each sort of 3 to 5 pages of music. They'd upload their transcriptions, and then I would check them. So the early challenges that we faced is the variety of pieces chosen by the Kickstarter backers. These range from piano scores to entire symphonies, and the length of the pieces. There are many scores with over more than like 10 instruments or 50 plus pages of music. And of course, many of the transcribers were inexperienced, and they saw OpenScore as a learning tool that they would do a transcription and then we would give them feedback on it. But of course, this is all basically what we're expecting, and we even encouraged, we wanted to get the well-known works. So we were hoping to get the longer works, and the way to help those inexperienced transcribers is I published a set of online exercises that they could complete before they started doing the transcriptions. So this would show them, they would see, it's basically instructions of, if you see this in the original score, here is how we would like you to notate that in Musescore. So it's like a step-by-step guide. And we'd also help them by producing a template score. So we would add all the instruments to a Musescore file and set it up all ready to go, so that they could just start adding notes from the beginning. And the rule for the template score is it has to contain all the instruments from all the movements, and this is important when it comes to joining them up later. And this is the first challenge, is joining all of those scores together. And we were relying on a Musescore 2 feature to do this, called the Albums feature, which was an experimental feature. And there are various issues with this feature. So eventually it became necessary for me to write a separate program in Python that would take scores and join them together outside of Musescore so that we could preserve as much information as possible. Otherwise, some of the transcriber's work would be lost. So then we would give the join score to... but the point of this is that even after the transcription is complete, there's still a significant amount of work that goes into tidying it up before it's actually ready to be published. Another challenge is the variety of notations. So what we were hoping is that we could sort of gradually speed up over time. So we were starting out with that initial one transcription being completed per month, one of these symphonies. But it was very difficult to speed up because we found that each new score would contain sort of new notation quirks that we hadn't encountered before, the transcribers wouldn't have seen. So we weren't sort of learning over time in the way that we hoped we would. So I was learning, but there'd be new transcribers and they wouldn't be gaining this experience, and each new score posed new challenges. So the solution to this was to actually, in each template score, I would add specific instructions for that score. So I would go through the IMSLP score and look for things that I thought the transcribers might struggle with, and then I would add instructions about those things to the score itself. So this made work easier for transcribers. It made work significantly easier after the transcription was complete, but it created a huge burden in studying those scores before the transcription could even begin. And in the extreme case, we have Wagner's Die Valkyrie here, which is the opera that contains the Ride of the Valkyries. And so you can see the template score for this has 114 different instruments, and that's because so what you're seeing here on the left is like a zoomed in version, and on the right you can see that line indicating that's how much you're looking at. So all of that down on the right hand side of the screen, that's more instruments. So you're only seeing like the wind section at the top, and there's still the brass below that, and then the percussion and the strings and so on. And this is due to the requirement to have every instrument that's in every movement. And so there's instruments here like clarinets in A and clarinets in B flat and so on. There's all the different keys. And the score itself is over 700 pages long. So this posed a significant challenge. And so because of the burden of creating these templates, meant that we needed to adopt a new approach. So about this time we were approached by Mark Gotham from the University of Cambridge, who had funding to run a project to digitize 19th century songs for piano and a singer. But we didn't think we'd help him because we were struggling with our own project. But I had another look at it, and I thought, well, perhaps actually we can help here, because these pieces that Mark wanted to transcribe were much shorter. There's 2 to 3 pages each, so there's no need to split the score up and rejoin it later on. So we just have one transcription group for all of the pieces, rather than one group for each piece. There's only 2 instruments in each score, and they're always the same instruments, so we just have one template that would work for every single one of these pieces. They're all based on a common theme, so the notation was similar. And what this meant is it was actually possible to get more people on board with the viewing, with the reviewing, whereas before it had to all be done by me because of all the specialist notation. So this allowed us to complete 250 of those shorter transcriptions in 4 months, which is kind of what we were hoping for. So with the main project and running out of time, so speeding up, we switched to doing transcriptions by individuals. And so rather than a group, would be one person would be the transcriber. But this means that the transcriptions run in series rather than in parallel. So one person working their way through the score. So it takes significantly longer, but of course you can still do more than one at a time. And so just recently, 24th of December, Musescore 3 was released, and this has important features that enable us to go faster in the future. So it has automatic layout, which means that the task of tidying up a transcription that's been finished is much quicker. And it also has a score comparison tool, which means that we can get printed out a list of, if somebody edits a score, we can see exactly what they changed, and this protects the integrity of the scores. And so we have the planets here, which even though the transcribers had done this on their own after the point at which it was given to us, we had to keep sending it back to them to get it ready for publication, and this took several months, even though it was already finished, but now we estimate that would take 2 to 3 weeks in Musescore 3. And I have a preview of the completed score here, so you see the couple of visualization, and we can listen to the playback on the score page on musescore.com, where you can't hear the playback.
Okay, I'm very sorry to interrupt you, but the time is up. We're actually over time already. So I would like to ask for a warm thank you for the talk.